Hey guys, and welcome back to Inspired by Jerica Brachet, and welcome back to the Zodiac Signs mini-series. We are on the second to last video, guys. Today we are focusing on the zodiacal sign of Virgo. And then after this, we just have Pisces, and then that is it. We will be wrapping up this series. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Check out my About Me videos to get to know a little bit about me and what my channel is about. If you're new to this series, welcome. If you definitely have ever felt curious about how the zodiac signs got their interpretations or their meanings, and if you're curious about some of the stereotypes that are attached to some of the signs and wondering where that comes from, then this mini series is for you. So I definitely recommend that you check out all of the other videos as well. I have been journeying through the zodiac by polarity. So instead of going through like the regular order, I started with Aries and then did the polarity sign Libra, and then so on and so forth through all of the signs. So the last polarity pair is Virgo and Pisces. And I believe what that does is that it's just able to show you how, when it comes to the polarities of the signs, they are one and the same in a lot of ways, but it's also the opposite ends of that axis that is where we're able to determine one sign from its opposite sign. And sometimes by understanding the opposite sign, you can better understand the opposite sign, if that makes sense. So by understanding Virgo, then you can see what's left over is then going to belong to Pisces, and you realize where they have things in common and where things are different. So yeah, I thought it would be cool to go through the zodiac in that way. So definitely check out the polarity signs for any of the videos that you click on. Check out all of them because they're really good. And then we also kind of discuss progression as you go through each season. Season as in, like, summer, spring, winter, fall, and how the signs line up with that. And you can see the influence of nature on these signs, which does have an effect on their interpretation. So, okay, if you did not know, this is the first video you clicked on, you may or may not be aware that I only approach astrology from a traditional standpoint. I do study traditionally. So that means that I'm only going to recognize the 5 main planets. So Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, plus the 2 luminaries, the sun and the moon. So I only give traditional rulership to the signs. That means you won't hear too much about Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. So that means Jupiter rules Pisces, Mars rules Scorpio, and Saturn rules Aquarius. Okay. So if you have already been following the series, you know what to do. Check the description box so that you can check for timestamps, and you can go ahead and skip to the big 4 for Virgo. But if you are new, I definitely recommend that you listen to this part. I'm going to do a really basic and quick introduction to astrology, and then we'll do another quick and basic introduction to the signs, and then we'll continue from there. So let's get started. All right, astrology derives from the Greek word astro, meaning star, and logos, meaning language, knowledge, or information. So essentially, astrology is a language of the heavens, or a language of the stars, or star talk. And it is the knowledge and the downloads, the information that we receive from the stars. Astrology studies the correlation between the movements of the celestial bodies, which we call the planets, and then the terrestrial events that actually happen on Earth. So it operates under the universal law of correspondence. And if you're familiar with any of the universal laws, or if you are familiar with the 7 Hermetic principles, maybe you've read a book like the Kabbalion, then you are probably familiar with the axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without, right? And so there's this idea that the universe is a whole system, a macrocosm, and then within that whole system is the microcosm, or these lesser wholes. And the idea is that there is a correlation between the two. What's happening on one plane affects the other plane, and there's sort of like this mirroring that takes place. And so then whatever is born or done at a particular moment in time, it will inherently have the qualities of that moment. And so astrology actually describes the nature of those moments. And so in previous videos, I sort of used the example of like a sommelier or like a wine connoisseur, and how just by tasting the wine, they're able to tell you what vineyard it came from, or what part of the world it came from, or what fruits were used that are infused in the wine. All of that just simply based off of tasting it. So when we're looking at astrology, which in the ancient times we called the birth chart the horoscope. And you guys know how I feel about etymology. If you don't, then you have not been watching the videos on my channel, and you should. But when we look into the etymology, or we're breaking down terminology or words, right? Consider a microscope, right? Micro meaning small, scope means to see. We use the microscope, a tool, to magnify things so that we can look into something and magnify what we see. So when we're talking about a horoscope, okay, horo, Horo, meaning time, and then scope means to look at. So when we're looking at the horoscope, we are literally looking into time. We are magnifying time, looking into the details through the birth chart. So by looking at the birth chart, we are then able to see a reflection of a person's personality or their energetic makeup, and determining the type of person that they are, some of the experiences that they may have, simply based off of where the celestial bodies were at the time that they were born. Again, the macrocosm affecting the microcosm. So I hope that makes sense. Moving on to the signs. Zodiac actually derives from the Greek word zodiakos, which means little circle of animals, or it can mean circle, circle of animals. And the signs are actually birthed from a combination of interactions between the four elements, which produce the four seasons, and the modalities in which they operate. So we know in most parts of the world, there are four distinct seasons, and each season has a beginning, middle, and transition. And that beginning, middle, and transition is what we call in astrology the modality. So then when you take the four seasons times the three modalities, 4 times 3 is 12. That is how you get the 12 zodiacal signs. Okay. So it's all based in nature and looking at the macro and the microcosm, and then the interaction and the play between those produces the zodiac. Okay. Now, contrary to popular belief, the signs are not the stars of the show. And if you follow any sort of pop astrology, that could be the impression that you get, because all you hear is, well, what's your sun sign? What's your sign? Everybody knows their sign, right? But not realizing that your entire chart is your makeup. Your sun sign is just a fraction of you. You have the planets somewhere in your chart, and they all fall in some of the signs somewhere in your chart. Okay. But the signs do spice things up. They do add a little bit of flavor, and they allow for a mode of expression in which the planets, which are the true stars and literal stars of the show, can express themselves. And so I sort of like to look at it like this. And I want to say I've given this example in the other videos too, or at least a few of them. And that's this: your body are the planets, right? So think of the planets like your physical body. The signs are like your wardrobe, right? So we look at modern day, fashion is a huge thing. Fashion is a whole industry, multi-billion-dollar industry all its own, right? And so it's the same way with pop astrology and the signs. There's such this big deal. But when we get to the nitty-gritty of it, your clothes, your wardrobe wouldn't mean anything unless you had a body to put them on. Okay. And that is how it is in astrology. The only reasons that the signs can be as popular as they are is because the planets exist. So, when we are talking about how the signs get their interpretations or how they get their meanings, we have to dial back a little bit and go back to the beginning, go back to the root of the thing to figure out how we even got to where we are when we're considering pop astrology. So, I hope that makes sense. So, what we're going to be doing, we are going to be looking at four major things to determine what contributes to the meaning of a sign. So we will be looking at the gender of the sign. So is it feminine? Is it masculine, yin, yang, nocturnal, diurnal? There's lots of terminology that we could use for that. We'll be looking at the element of the sign: fire, air, earth, or water. We are going to look at the modality of the sign, which I mentioned earlier. So, is it the beginning of the season, the middle, or the transition? Which modality does it fall into? And last, we're going to consider the planetary ruler for the sign. So, which of the celestial bodies governs that sign? So, let's get started for Virgo. All right, you guys. So, for Virgo, the big four, Virgo is a yin sign. As I have mentioned, all of the earth and water signs are yin, nocturnal or feminine. Okay. The element here for Virgo is earth. The modality is mutable, or some might say double bodied. And the planetary ruler for Virgo is Mercury. All right, so let's jump into this thing. All right, so if we're considering yin, right? Yin energy is going to be repressive. It's very internal. It's an inward experience. It is receptive and it is guarded. And that is very different from its polarity, which is yang, which is going to be more expressive, external. And as much as people hate to talk about body parts, like when we get to the nitty gritty of it, this is the best example for me. When you look at a male body, the male's anatomy goes outward, right? When we're considering down there, goes outward. And for a female body, hers is inward. So it's literally like yang, expressive, going out, versus yin, which is receptive. It takes in, it receives. So I hate to put it that way, but at the same time, it's like, it's such a good example, right? Okay, now Earth is generated from the temperament qualities of cold and dry. So, the influence of the cold quality is what gives Virgo a contracting, dense, and absorbent sort of attributes. These are attributes of Earth. So, if you resonate any of that with Virgo, it comes from or it derives from the Earth quality. And then the dry part, which is also Earth, again, cold and dry. Dry adds a little bit of resistance and rigidity, and a more of a hard expression to earth, because if you pack enough earth together or you go outside and you stump around, earth is solid. Okay, it can be very immovable. So even though Virgo's modality is very movable, being mutable, it still has that influence of earth, which is going to have that cold and dry, that rigidity and solid expression to it as well. Now, the earth signs carry the melancholic temperament, which gives them a greater focus on practicality and function ability. And that is a trait that you see throughout all of the earth signs. So, Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo tend to focus more on functionality and practicality of a thing. Earth is also slow. It is contracted and non-molding. It can be a little bit detached, tense, resistant, because it really has this solid staying ability to it. And that is why all of the earth signs sort of have this way of just being able to sustain, or being able to maintain inertia. The downside to that is getting stuck. You know, earth can be so comfortable, it can be stuck, and it can hinder progression. Now, Virgo is a mutable sign, and so that means that it is the transition part of the modality. So we have cardinal, which signifies the beginning of the season. We have fixed, which signifies the middle of the season. And then we have mutable, which signifies the transition period of a season. And so Virgo season is the transition of summer into fall. Okay, so it's the end of summer, and this is that season where you're going to get summer temperatures and qualities, but you're also going to get a little bit of early fall temperatures and qualities as well. And so mutable energy is then really the sweet spot between cardinal and fixed, and it can fluctuate between both expressions. So the mutable signs tend to be able to fluctuate between sometimes seeming more cardinal and then other times seeming a little bit more fixed. But it can sort of fluctuate, between the two. So that's Virgo and Pisces. That's also Gemini and Sagittarius. So those are the mutable signs. They all sort of have that quality. And so that quality can come off a little bit inconsistent because they like to move around. There's this flexibility and pliability to it. And so, as I mentioned, going from transitioning from summer into autumn, this is a time where we experience our harvest, right? And so, a lot of the times, especially with the symbol for Virgo, or the representation that we normally see is like the virgin, right? Or this maiden that usually has some sort of bountiful harvest, and that is harvest season when you consider that time of the year. And so in my opinion, because it's at this point, because after Virgo season is Libra season, right? And Libra season is where we experience our fall or our autumn equinox. And during that time, as I explained in the Libra video, is where the sun is getting ready to really make its descent into the underworld. We're starting to switch over to where now the nights will be longer and the days will be shorter. And so Virgo season captures that transition. And so, being that it is a time of harvest, it's where we basically need to harvest what's left of the sun, harvest that light that we get from the sun, right? Because once the sun isn't as present in the sky as we get closer towards the end of the year, we're going to need to have that sun's energy almost like on reserve so that we can use it as needed until we get back to the spring equinox, where the energy shifts and then the days become longer again and then the nights become shorter again. We have more access to that vitality from the sun. And so we want to harvest that energy, harvest those skills. And Virgo is definitely associated with skill building. Okay. So we want to capture the essence of the sun. We want that light. We want to be able to cash in on all the work that we did in the prior seasons, right? So all of the gardening and farming that you've done, whatever it is that you've cultivated, whatever skills that you have been cultivating in yourself, you want to be able to cash in on that in Virgo season, because again, as we lose light for the rest of the year, we're going to need to depend on what it was that we harvested to carry us through those cold autumn and winter months until the sun sort of returns, right? Okay, now Virgo is ruled by Mercury, okay? And Mercury is this very androgynous, very ambivalent sort of planet. It isn't diurnal, but it isn't nocturnal. And as a matter of fact, its expression can be influenced by the planets that is surrounding it. So one of the traditional terminologies that we use is the concept of sect, okay? And that is whether or not your chart, your birth chart, falls into being a day team, meaning you were born during the day chart, or a night team, meaning you're born during the night chart. And so Mercury is sort of a wild card planet that could play on either team. It just sort of depends on the planets that's around it, and it will sort of carry out those expressions, or adapt to the expression of the planets around it. And so I want to say I probably mentioned in the Gemini video, because Gemini is also ruled by Mercury, that Mercury gives me like vibes of being like second hand to the king. So if the king of this kingdom, this your birth chart is the sun, then Mercury is sort of like the hand. So if you're like a Game of Thrones fan, or if you watch House of Dragons, you know what the hand is, right? The hand is that right hand, a man, or, well, back in that day, it was definitely a man, to the king. And so he was the messenger. He was the one that went out into the kingdom, got all the tea, figured out all the gossip, see what the people are doing and what's going on, and then would come back and report that to the king. And so in your chart and in the sky, Mercury only gets but so far from the sun through his travels, and he retrogrades. He goes forward, he goes backwards. And if we look at the mythology around Mercury has been said to be incarnated as Hermes Trismegistus, or Thoth. And so there's this ability to visit all of the realms, the upper world, the middle world, as well as the underworld. So when you consider that, you can think of how much knowledge and information Mercury has access to, because of how much access to the realms it's able to move and travel between. And so being able to then take that and to report it back to the king, we sort of get an idea of the Mercury energy and how this planet affects the chart. So then Mercury becomes a messenger of all kinds. It gives and receives information. It's our ability to process information going in, going out. It is communication of all kinds. So that means writing, it means talking, it's listening, however you are able to communicate. Mercury governs that. It also governs transport. Again, oh my gosh, that's my 1111 alarm. Sorry about that. So it has this ability to, remember, move all over the chart. It has the most traveling capacity than all of the other planets. So it also rules transport. So your cars and driving. Skills and learning, and we already talked about why that is a thing for Mercury. And then again, it has access to all the realms. So that gives us an idea of Mercury as a planetary ruler. We understand that Virgo is a yin sign, and we've discussed what yin energy is like. We've also discussed the earth energy as an element, and then we've discussed the modality of it being a mutable sign. So I'm jumping ahead of myself. Here we go. All right, so let's get into talking about the essence of Virgo. So when we merge the interpretations that we derived from the big four, that is what's going to give us the energetic essence of Virgo and what a Virgo environment sort of feels like, or how that is expressed in your birth chart. So again, we're taking the gender, the element, the modality, and the planetary ruler, taking all that together and getting a good interpretation of Virgo energy. So then with all that, we could say Virgo energy is very resourceful and very skillful. Okay, remember, because of that earth element influence, that earth energy wants to focus on function ability and practicality. So it's about being very resourceful. When you take the brains of Mercury and then you add the practicality and functionability of Earth together, you're going to get an energy that is very resourceful and very skillful, very detail oriented, because remember, it has all this knowledge which provides reasoning and a whole bunch of analytical and intellectual thinking. So Virgo energy is very analytical. It's going to pay attention to detail. It's very crafty and meticulous, and that craftiness, I think, comes from the trickster archetype that has also been associated with Mercury. And that is because, think about it, if you as a planet have the ability to travel amongst all of the realms, you can get to places in the sky that other planets cannot, then you have the ability to determine what information you're going to share and what information you may withhold to keep for yourself, right? If you are the king's hand and you have the ability to go out into the kingdom, gather all this information, it's only through you that's determined if the king is going to get the truth or if it's going to get partial truth. Mercury is controlling the T, right? It controls that communication. It's controlling, like, think of the newspaper, right? Or the media. It's very mercurial, being able to control what people are able to see, the news that they are able to hear. And so there can definitely be a craftiness or a trickster energy to Mercury's sign. So both Virgo and Gemini sort of have those abilities. Virgo energy can be very meticulous. Okay. It's going to be very helpful. It's a problem solver. Again, it's about that resourceful and function ability. So its ability to be very, to solve problems is what makes it very helpful. And so, being very, I don't want to say like a servant, but like servitude is definitely a key word for Virgo as well. Just coming off is really helpful. They like to lend a hand and they're able to see what's missing and sort of add to it. They're going to be very organized and they're very curious. And that curiosity comes from Mercury's influence of just wanting to learn and soak up a lot of information. And when you think about Gemini, Gemini is like that in a lot of ways as well. Gemini more intellectually, but Virgo, it's going to be more in a materialistic way. It's going to be more earthly related sort of ways, and being curious about that things. Like when I think Virgo, I always get like real herbalist type energy. So like these are the people who want to know how the things that are on earth, how the things that are already manifested operate, versus Gemini is going to be willing to be a little bit more imaginative and get more into the mind and be a little bit more out there when it comes to its sort of curiosity. So Virgo's curiosity is definitely a lot more grounded than, say, Gemini. Virgo energy is going to be very judgmental and discerning. Again, when you know a lot, you judge a lot. There's a lot that you have a lot of opinions. There's a lot that you have to say. And it's going to be very skeptical because it wants to know that it's not just some idea like Gemini. It wants to know, is it working? Let me see a prototype. It wants to see the function ability of it. So it's not just about the idea of something, it's about the manifestation of it actually being usable and functioning. Okay. Where else are we? Self-reliant. Absolutely. Because when you have the brains and you have the work ethic to make things happen, you don't need anybody else. And Virgo can definitely have a way of making you feel like they don't need you. They got it all. Okay. So yeah, you're gonna get a little bit of that, and you're gonna get a little bit of that judgmental energy as well. They can be very, very judgy, but it's because they look into the details of things and they come up with a conclusion about it. It's just how they operate. All right. Due to that earth influence, Virgo can be a little bit conservative as well. Again, going back to being very discerning and meticulous. It can be very precise, specific. It may come off as perfectionist in some ways and wanting things to be, being very particular about things. And again, when you're into the little details, that's just sort of the way it is, But Virgo has a very practical and constructively versatile approach to things. So even though it is of the earth element, what makes it a little bit different from the other earth signs, Capricorn and Taurus, is that it is versatile. It's constructively versatile because of all the knowledge that it has access to. So whereas it wants things to manifest and work, it also has more access to knowledge, which allows it to be very innovative and a little bit more flexible, and more versatile with how it's going to make something functional or make something practical, how it cultivates its skills. It has a little bit more flexibility and pliability than Capricorn or Taurus would have. And so Virgo definitely has the ability to analyze information, get very crafty with it. And I say crafty versus creative. I feel like creative is definitely more of an air and water word or term to describe them. But I like crafty for the earth signs because crafty inherently has this building flavor to it. It gives you the idea that they are building something, which is very earth element. But they can be crafty and make it very beneficial and something that is going to be efficient. And again, that's an earth thing. Is it functionable? Okay. And then they have this long-term gratification. Sometimes they can be overly critical, very critical of themselves. That they do have in common with Capricorn. And remember, this is a yin sign, and so the criticalness, the criticism that they often have because of that judgmental ability is very internal. Now, sometimes they can express it externally, but it's not as though they are overly judgmental or overly critical on something outside of them more than they are on themselves. They're hard on other people because they're hard on themselves. Best believe this is an internal critical battle that is going on between them as well. Okay. Let's see. In medical astrology, Virgo rules the stomach and the intestines. So I find that to be very interesting as well. So wherever you have Virgo energy in your chart, that's going to be an area that you must learn that the process or the journey itself is just as important as the destination. So let's discuss planets that are in Virgo or that are visiting Virgo's domain. Those planets are going to be very skillful. They want to cultivate skill. They're going to be a little bit more critical and judgmental, but they will be more resourceful. They probably will micromanage a little bit. And again, that perfectionism that I mentioned earlier. So planets in Virgo may be a bit discriminatory as well. And like I said, the whole lesson to learn for Virgo is that sometimes you get a little bit too lost in the details to where you're so particular, you're so analytical about something that you can lose the big picture because you're being a little bit overly detail oriented. So if you have the sun in Virgo, your ascendant falls in Virgo, or you have the moon in Virgo, you're probably really going to resonate with a lot of what's being said in this video today. All right, you guys, let's jump over to discussing the polarity. So the polarity sign for Virgo is none other than Pisces. And so when we're talking about polarities, and this is that second universal law that I mentioned, polarities are just two sides of the same coin. So essentially, things that appear to be opposites or contradictory are really just two extremes of the same thing. So they are identical in nature, but they do differ in degree. And it's the differing of the degrees that really establishes them as being separate entities. Okay. And so the axis here with Virgo and polarity, Virgo. Ooh, I was doing good, y'all. I was doing good. Okay. So Virgo and Pisces, that axis, we're going to be able to see here where they are alike and then where they are very different. So what makes Virgo and Pisces very similar in nature is the fact that they are both yin signs and they are mutable signs. I would add, in addition to that, would be the commonality between Mercury and Jupiter being this quest for knowledge, or this desire to um, expand itself. You know, Mercury wants to expand more from a mental realm, but Jupiter also is about expansion, but from more of from experience though, rather than it just being through study and mental the way that Mercury would be. And so that, along with the mutability and the yin aspect, that is where Virgo and Pisces are actually a whole lot the same, a whole lot. But then, as we're seeing here, where they're different is their planetary ruler and then their element. So, again, Virgo ruled by Mercury, Pisces ruled by Jupiter. Virgo is an earth sign, Pisces is a water sign. And so, with all of the earth water signs, there's definitely this distinct difference between what matters most for them. For earth signs, it goes back to the practicality and resourcefulness. But then for water signs, it's about the feelings and emotions. And so, both Virgo and Pisces essentially are all about the details, and they love soaking up information. It's just that Virgo prefers to learn and get very detailed in an intellectual way, whereas Pisces prefers to get very detailed and very intimate with experience, or through experience and emotion. Virgo is going to be way more practical and grounded, and then Pisces is going to be more fluid and emotionally driven. And so Virgo is going to want to get into the details mechanically. As I mentioned in the previous slide, that is where the lesson can be learned for Virgo, getting lost in the details. Whereas Pisces is more big picture. You know, it's water, so it lacks boundaries. And on top of that, Pisces is mutable water. So it's definitely no boundaries. It's the most boundaryless of the water signs. And so with Pisces, all of the lines are blurred and it lacks distinction. Whereas on the opposite end of that spectrum with Virgo, it's all about distinction, not necessarily boundaries in the way that Saturn has boundaries, but distinction as this is this and that is that. And being able to know what belongs to me and my energy versus what belongs to you and your energy. Whereas with Pisces, that can definitely get lost in the sauce, okay? Because Pisces is all about that integration. And so Pisces offers the ability to dream, flow, and imagine the possibilities to Virgo. It offers that to Virgo. What are the possibilities and all of this endless dreaming and imagination that you can have with Pisces? Whereas Virgo, being earth, offers form, that distinction, and a little bit more realism to Pisces. You know, if Pisces is getting caught up in the fantasy, Virgo is going to be like, yeah, but um where's the manifestation of that? And that's a very earth and water thing, is what you are able to will into manifestation through your imagination, right? Imagination meaning to image in something, so it can be very visual, right? Emotional. Whereas with Virgo, it's about the literal manifestation of a thing, the tangibility of it, you know? So when we're talking earth and water signs, you're going to see that theme of the intangible versus the tangible. All right, you guys, now we're getting into where you may have Virgo energy in your chart. And we are going to go through this by the rising sign, okay? So kicking it off with Aries rising. If you have Aries rising in your chart, that means if you have Aries rising in your chart. Let's try that again. If you are Aries rising, you have Virgo on the 6th house, okay? So this is the house of daily routine, your work, your health. This is the area where you feel very altruistic or your sense of duty. And so having Virgo here, oh my gosh, an Aries rising is going to be very helpful in this area of their chart. They are going to be very detail oriented in their work. They feel a sense of duty to their work, and they're going to be very particular about it, very discriminatory about it. All right, Taurus rising, you have Virgo energy on your 5th house of creativity, self-expression, risky stuff, sex, children, anything that is creative. And so Taurus rising, this is another earth house for you. So there's already going to be some affinity there. So for Taurus rising, you may be very particular about the things that you create. You may really get into the details. You may be very much a perfectionist with how you go about creating and being crafty and cultivating things, wanting to make sure that all of the I's are dotted, all of the T's are crossed. It's possible that the way that you express yourself can be in a very Virgo way, which adds to that nurturing energy when it comes to Taurus because of that helpful and willingness to help and be of service energy that you get from Virgo. Gemini rising, you have Virgo energy on your 4th house of family, home. This is more of the private self, and it may even describe your childhood experience or your upbringing. So, Gemini rising, when you are in the privacy of your own home, you probably have a lot of Virgo energy. You may be very particular about your home, very discriminatory. You may be very helpful. I mean, you're already Gemini and intellectual. So when you get home, you're just as analytical as you are as a person. So home really feels like home for you because that means your 1st house and your 4th house, which are important angles in the chart, had the same ruler, which is Mercury. Cancer rising, you have Virgo energy on your 3rd house of information, your local environment, short distance travel, your siblings. This is an area of writing as well in your daily rituals. So for Cancer rising, you may like your daily ritual to be very organized. You know, maybe every day you like it to look a certain way that helps you to feel like if it gives you a sense of home because it has what's the word I want to use? Um it's familiar, right? And so for Cancer rising, how you process information, how you take in and receive take in and give out, sorry, information could be in a very Virgo way. You may want to really analyze it and be very particular about breaking it down and getting into the details of things. Leo rising, you are going to have Virgo energy on your 2nd house. This is the house of your resources. The 2nd house supports the 1st house. So, Leo risings, you guys know how to support yourself, and you're very particular in how you may do it. You may really, really be into making sure that the functionality of your money, making sure that your money works for you, is very important, or whatever you do to earn your resources. And the 2nd house can also be about the things that we have value in. And so when it comes to Leo risings and all of the vibrancy that they have, Leo rising wants to make sure that the things that are of value to them are of high quality. Okay. It's going to be quality over quantity. Virgo risings, this is your sign. So you are going to feel this the most. You probably resonate with everything or almost everything that was mentioned in this video today, because this is your personality, your behavior, your vitality and health. You embody Virgo energy for sure. Now, if you have planets in your 1st house, this could definitely alter the expression, okay? Libra risings. Okay, you have Virgo energy in the 12th house. This is the shadow self, solitude, the unconscious in a place of confinement. So for Libra risings, you're probably very self-critical mentally and in the private self. You unconsciously judge yourself a lot. you're very particular and maybe hard on yourself in some areas more privately or intimately than you let on to, because being a Libra rising and being Venus ruled, you care about others. You're so people pleasing type of folks. But on the inside, you know, in the more private areas of the mind and mental space, you can be a little bit hard on yourself. So Libra risings, work on that. Scorpio risings, you have Virgo on the 11th house of friends, groups, networking, social interactions, and like minded people. So for Scorpio risings, you may get along well with Virgo people, because as a Scorpio rising, you like to go deep, and Virgo also likes to go deep, except you're going to go deep with emotions. Virgo's going to be more deep with the more practical parts of life. But being deep and being very intimate is something that you have in common. So that is very familiar for you. Sagittarius rising, you have Virgo on the 10th house of career, the public self, reputation, and responsibility. So for Sagittarius rising, you may be very particular about the work that you put out. You're very particular about how you show up in the world and how people view you. You're probably very protective over your reputation, or you may really take a Virgo approach to the responsibilities that you have, and you're very careful and organized and planned when it comes to the career and how you operate outside of the home. For Capricorn rising, you have Virgo energy on the 9th house. So you're going to feel Virgo energy more so with your spirituality, your philosophy, that higher learning. You're probably very particular, organized, have tabs, a table of contents. You type up your notes when it comes to expanding the minds, right? Or maybe you are the type of person that needs a whole itinerary when you travel and you go out. Very Capricorn. Again, Capricorn, this is another earth house for you. So you have a lot of affinity here. Aquarius rising, you have Virgo energy on the 8th house. This is the house of other people's stuff, other people's resources, shared resources, the inner mind, the inner psyche, death, taxes, and inheritance. So for Aquarius rising, you may be very particular when it comes to the inner psyche, the inner mind, similar to what Libra rising experiences with the 12th house. And that's because both Libra risings and Aquarius risings are air signs. So you both have this earth energy on your more private houses in the chart. Aquarius rising, you could be very critical of sharing things with others. You may want to be the boss and take the reins and sort of be the leader in this area of your chart. Pisces rising, you have Virgo energy on the 7th house, and that is because that is opposite of the Virgo risings. So that is the axis of the 1st and 7th house, Virgo and Pisces. So Pisces, having Virgo on your 7th house, this is the house of relationships, your one-on-one interactions with others, areas where you are committed. So for Pisces rising, you really do take that servitude to another level when you're in relationship, or when you are having one-on-ones, or anything that you're committed to. You're going to lend a hand. You want to make sure it's organized, that they're taken care of. You could be a little bit discriminatory and judgmental, a little bit crafty in this area, but this is an area that allows you to relate to other people. And so you're definitely going to want to listen to the polarity part of this video, where you can learn to fall into or lean into those Virgo attributes, okay? All right, you guys, that's it for the sign of Virgo. And so again, my name is Jerica Roche. I am an astrologer, a spiritual maven, a certified Usui Reiki master, as well as an integrative healing arts practitioner. And I want you guys to get to know yourself energetically. And so my books are open right now. If you would like to book an astrological consult with me, I offer 2 types of readings right now. If you check the description box below, there will be a link for you to book with me a link to my website so that you can read about the types of readings that I offer. So yeah, definitely check that out. And please follow me on the socials. Okay, my Instagram handle is right there on the screen for you. It is at msjerib. And that's it for this video, you guys. Next up, we will have Pisces, and that will be the last video for this mini series. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Do you resonate with the things that were said in this video today? Are you a Virgo? Do you have your ascendant in Virgo, moon in Virgo? Let me know your thoughts below. And that's it, you guys. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.